6:15. They come on after 7:30. Just wish we kept raining all the time.
He's got this for deer and he doesn't want anything up there until.
Really? I didn't even know.
We don't.
There was that lightning, you know, like.
Yeah, I hear a lot.
Okay, we can rock and roll.
Okay, welcome to the Guthrie Public Schools Board of Education regular monthly meeting, October 10th. Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Here.
Davis. Here. Smedley. Here. Gerard.
Here.
Schroeder.
Here.
Pearson. Here. Salee.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as we begin this meeting, let us pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 6, presentation of employees and student of the month recognition.
Mr. Ogle?
Well, we had a good morning. We drove out through the rain to Charter Oak, Mr. Whimsy and I, and so our student of the month is Charter Oak first grader, Lucy McKinley. And so talking insurance with first graders was real interesting, and Blake got a good lot of laughs. And so, but Lucy was nominated by her teacher, Miss Schaefer, for the character trait kindness and respectful. And so she was presented in class today with a $50 gift card from Foundation Insurance and Blake Whimsy. Our support employee of the month is our technology analyst, Lynn Sarasua. Lynn has been probably Dee's right-hand man with the integration part of the Infinite Campus, and Annie Chad nominated her for all that hard work, and I know Annie and them have been working hard with Lynn trying to figure out Infinite Campus, and so very deserving. And then our support employee of the month is junior high science Crystal Marrero, and she was nominated by the junior high counselor Susan Whitehead. And so Crystal's been doing a good job. She's one of the teachers with the co-taught, and we've had one staff member in the science that's been out on maternity leave, and so Crystal's really stepped up and been able to help that teacher out while the teacher was out. So anyway, I know Mr. Evans will have great stories on these, why they were nominated here in the future. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, agenda item 7. Do we have any comments to the board by citizens registered to speak?
We have none.
Any board members? Okay, agenda item 8, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wednesday signals the end of the first 9 weeks of school, and fall break is Thursday and Friday. Our October 1 student count was 3,477. That is up 86 students from last year at the same time. We're now back to student numbers on the level of enrollment prior to the pandemic. And I think with all of the residential potential for growth in the community, we certainly would expect that number to continue to rise as we go forward. A lot of good news out of athletics. The Lady J softball team qualified for the state tournament. They're going to play Tahlequah at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday at Hall of Fame Stadium in Oklahoma City. Cross-country teams continue to show improvement in both girls and boys teams, and they're ranked 4th. Both of them are ranked 4th in Class 5A right now. Our football team had their first loss of the season last Friday night to McGinnis, but they're off to a tremendous start as well at 5-1 and continue to be ranked in the top 10 in the state. And the game Friday night, we had a whole lot of things where we involved a lot of our students. We had Deanna Davenport's kindergarten class sang the national anthem. We had a ball drop from the helicopter ambulance. They actually landed on the field and presented the game ball to us. And we had really great football game if you didn't care who won or lost. Unfortunately, the Blue Jays got beat right at the end on the last play. A little bit of an update. Let you know we're still tracking active COVID cases in the 73044 zip code. As of last Monday, there were 37 active reported cases. Currently, we have no active reported cases among students or staff within the district. So we're still tracking that, but the key statement there is active reported, because with the way that we have the home tests and everything available now, the active cases that are reported, we feel like are being underreported. So, but it's still a lot less, but it's still out there. And this morning, a group of us met with our architect to review the initial floor plan of the Cotterell reconstruction. Last week, Mr. Graham and I toured Charter Oak Elementary with Mr. Ball. To review that floor plan, we discussed potential similarities and differences as we build plans for construction. And of course, that will be an item that when we get a little further along, we'll bring that to the board committees so that you guys are well aware of that. We've had some preliminary looks at that, and in fact, the time that we spent with Mr. Ball was time well spent, because we've identified some areas where maybe we can, with the same square footage, have better use of some of that spaces and better address the needs of our students. And so we're going to continue to try and get better and learn from what we did in the past. So that's my report.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Simpson. Agenda item 9, presentation of final 2022 Oklahoma testing program for Charter Oak, Cotterell, Central, Fogarty, Guess, and Junior High by Executive Director Ms. Carmen Walters and Assistant Superintendent Mr. Doug Ogle.
I believe we're going to start with Carmen on the elementary side of things.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off for us. So I'm going to go over the third and fourth grade OSTP results. The first one we can kind of take a look through is Guthrie Public Schools, and then the red is the state average. For third grade math, did a great job. 33% was Guthrie, and then just 1 point under the state average, which was at 34. Moving on to third grade PLA. You can see that we're at 22, state's at 29. Obviously, that's something that we're working on. And first-time testers, COVID, it's just kind of a big mixed barrel with the third grade ELA. And we've got students this year that are on all kinds of levels, all different grade levels. Some have been in school, some have been homeschooled, some we don't know where they've been. And so trying to sort all of that, our teachers are doing a great job. It's like juggling about 20 balls, but we're making steps into that and look forward to working on that. Our new reading curriculum is coming in by the box load, so I know that they're excited about that. So lots of new materials to assist them with that as well. So I know firsthand, and I've been seeing cows and some tractors and some other things that look really fun for them. Any questions for me on any of the third grade scores? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to fourth grade. Fourth grade did a great job. You can see that for fourth grade math, we're at 41%. The state average is 33%. And then last, the fourth grade ELA, and I know you guys get so many acronyms, but ELA stands for English Language Arts. So it's reading, anagram, writing, kind of everything all together. And so that's why you don't see it say just reading, because it tests over those things as well. Fourth grade ELA, you got 27% is Guthrie, and then 24% is the state average. So again, doing a great job in that area. It's still, if you think about it, with the pandemic, you're still so low, even at the state average. So hopefully the state and the nation will be able to get kind of level on that. Questions for me on anything?
I'll take over with the 5th and 6th grade. Fifth grade math, Guthrie was 21% and the state average was 26%. Our fifth grade ELA, we were 27% and the state average was 29%. And just a reminder to the board that fifth and eighth grade do test in science. And so our fifth grade science, Guthrie was 44% and the state average was 38%. Sixth grade math, Guthrie was 20% and the state average was 23%. Sixth ELA, Guthrie was 30% and the state average was 27%. Flip on over to the junior high. Seventh grade math, Guthrie's 28% and the state average was 24%. Seventh grade ELA, Guthrie was 25%, the state average was 22%. Eighth grade math was 28% for Guthrie and 16% for the state average. Eighth grade ELA, Guthrie was 16%, the state average was 25%. Eighth grade science was 34%, and the state average was 30%. And so before I get into some of our two-year test scores, is there any questions over any of the 5th through 8th grade scores?
What kind of factors or things would you say plays into the difference in some of these scores? Because like 8th grade math, there's a tremendous difference between what we had and the state average. I mean, is it a teaching method? Is it a maturity issue? What kind of things could we look at?
Well, I'd like to hope that that's been one of our veteran teachers that have been there that have been in the district for 28 or 29 years that led the 8th grade math department and knew what worked and knew how to get that for those teachers. And the system that they have in place has worked. It did dip a little bit. Mr. Brenwell and I talked about the English, and we don't know if we had some new teachers in that at that time, or if we just had some kids that were really low because they didn't spend a lot of time with reading during the pandemic, and so we got to catch those up. But most of the scores, it seemed like, besides a couple, we were only 1 or 2% below the state average, and so I think what we're doing as a district is working. We just have to keep on that and look for remediation strategies that work and continue using them. And if they're not working, just like what Mr. Brenwell and I talked about, is what do we do different, and dig into that data.
Continue to monitor the fidelity to our plan. And I think that's something that we've had some internal discussions about as well, and point to some of this and make sure that we are maintaining that fidelity.
And for the people that are watching at home, when we're saying these percentages, these are a percentage of students that are proficient or advanced. There's 4 different levels. There's advanced, proficient, basic, and below basic. And so we use proficient and advanced because when we get our report card, those are the scores that they will count of students that meet that criteria. And so when we give you the scores, we're showing the students that are proficient or advanced percentage-wise.
So Doug, what would be an average? The basic category, the proficient, or kind of in between there?
Right there at that borderline. You're going to see more kids at basic with the way that the state has done this model. And so if you look at it, the majority of the students are in basic. And so we really look at, when we start digging into data, we just got ALCA up going, which is our program that houses all our data, but we'll start looking at those kids that were really high on that basic that didn't get to the proficient, and those are the kids we really look to remediate to try to get to that next level for the next year.
Thank you.
The next two are just our junior tests. These are two new tests. They do not count. The State Department, if you remember, the juniors take the ACT. We brought a couple months ago whether we take the ACT or the SAT. We do not have the ACT scores back from last year yet, so we'll give those back when they come in. But the state did come back with two tests that aren't part of that ACT because they didn't believe that we were testing and seeing what our juniors knew in U.S. history and in science. And so these are two new tests. And so the CCRA is the College and Career Readiness Assessment. And so 11th grade science, I can't read this right here, is 15% for Guthrie, and the state average is 26%. And in U.S. history, Guthrie was 36%, and the state average was 47%. One of the things Mr. LeGrand and I talked about a little bit on the phone is we have to get these kids to buy in that just because it doesn't count, that they still need to take it serious. And so they're looking at different strategies to get those in. They looked at several kids that took the test that may have been out on the test date that took it when they came back. There was a makeup date, and some of those students finished it in 15 minutes. And so that's probably not a true example, but trying to get the juniors to realize to take it and take it serious like the ACT.
So on these statistics, so remind me again, so you have basic, proficient, and advanced, right? What's the various categories? So we're looking at proficient and advanced, right? So what are the other categories?
And Doug, is the CCRA on the same spectrum?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's still on, it falls under the. And so it goes advanced, proficient, basic, below basic. That was what you were asking.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm asking. So do we see a more full picture of kind of the distribution of those categories compared to the state averages?
I can't tell you on these two. On the other ones, we do. I mean, you can see that there's a certain percentage. If you remember, I believe it's the NAEP test that OSTP goes off of, and they base that, and that's where they get their percentages from. And so there's always going to be a certain percentage. It doesn't matter if everybody was a 90%. There's always going to be a certain percentage of advanced.
So I'm kind of curious where we are in the middle or on the bottom half. You know, what's that distribution of? You know, how many do we have at basic and below basic relative to the state averages? It's be an interesting statistic.
Yeah. If you'd like to see that, I can do that and bring it to committee.
Okay, yeah.
The next thing we're required to give is our college remediation rate. You've seen some of these scores, especially those two that we just looked at. We don't have the ACT for the juniors, but our college remediation rate, these are the 2021 students that entered, that went to school at a college. And so our English remediation rate, we have 8.5% of our graduates that needed remediation in English, where the state average was 12.
You've all heard me say that these remediation rates are actually more relevant to what we're doing than many of the other testing matrices that we look at, because it truly monitors where our kids are after they leave us as compared to other students that matriculate to college.
Our math remediation rate, 10.2% of our graduates needed remediation in math. The state average was 21%. And in reading, 1.7% of our students needed remediation, where the state average was 9.2%. Any questions over the remediation rate before I get into our last one?
And Chris, help me remember, we've shown improvement on that remediation rate, have we not?
Yeah, and that's probably what I'm most proud of, because these kids take a lot more stock in the ACT than they do those science and history tests, because it doesn't mean anything for them. I hate to say that, but when they really try and present themselves, and the kids that are going on to college, these reflect that they are quite prepared when they leave Guthrie High School to succeed at the post-secondary level.
Last report that
college dropout rate, though, is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is our 2021 dropout report. It is, the blue is our high school, and it is 4.86%. The red is the junior high at 3.67%, and the state average is 5.5%. So it got brought up in committee. We reported this in two different ways because the report card does, it used to do one way, and it was the students that finished the junior high in 8th grade, and that was a cohort group, and so they took those kids that finished the year and then graduated or didn't graduate. Those were considered dropouts for that cohort. These are actually students that started the first day of school with us, that finished the year or dropped out.
So you're saying the report card metric changed?
It has over the years.
So it's not a cohort now?
No, I think it still is.
It still is, okay.
Yes.
But the definition of that cohort has changed because at one time, schools were penalized even if a kid went to another school. They may have they left here at the end of their 8th grade year, gone to another school, been there for 2 years, and been a dropout, and then the school where they left was actually penalized. So they have changed that through the years quite a bit to try to make it more relevant of a statistic.
Now, Doug, on the state, how's that number compiled? Is that just high school, or is that junior high and high school?
That's both.
Both.
Yeah. It doesn't give me junior high and the percentage for junior high students. It just gives the one state
Combination.
average. Any other questions over any of those?
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, agenda item 10, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 11, minutes of the regular meeting held on September 12th, 2022.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on September 12th, 2022.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Abstain.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Abstain.
5 ayes, 2 abstentions.
Before we go any further in the agenda, I wanted to call the board's attention to the fact that we have 2 number 12s on the agenda, but they are not the same item. That was an error in how the agenda was put together, but because the items are listed properly, there's no need for any concern with the agenda. But you're going to have 2 number 12s, but they are different items. And Sam offers her apologies. I should have called you out.
Okay, so the first agenda item 12, titled the business agenda. So 12A, discussion of possible action regarding the 2022 to 2023 school budget.
Dr. Chappell?
Good evening,
Good evening.
board members, Dr. Simpson, and to each of you. It is my pleasure to present to you our 2022-2023 budget. And I'm going to take it just a little slower since we do have a new board member since last year when I presented last, Mr. Gerard. So let me get started with that. For my budget overview, I'm going to be discussing tonight our operating budget structure, funding sources, the funding purpose and limitations, analysis of our fund balance carryover, and our revenue projections. So with that, we'll talk about our 2022-23 estimate of needs. We know that each year the estimate of needs is developed by Putnam and Company, our auditors. This is our legal appropriation, which is established for our revenue, our tax levies, and our ad valorem valuations by our county excise board. So the budget itself cannot exceed the appropriations that you see on this page. So in the first column, we'll talk about our current year. Carryover we see here is $2.9 million versus $3.4 of last year. And there is a difference of $452,000 less, which I will go into a little further in my presentation. But for good measure here, we have $23.3 million estimated in additional revenues versus $25.8 last year. That negative $2.477 million is basically from our ESSER revenue that we had last year. We did have an estimate of $6.2 million, and so we spent $3.36, believe it or not, which was a good thing. And so this year they're estimating less, or we have less available, if you will, of $4.2 million. So that's why we're down on that $2.4 million there. And then ad valorem tax estimates, you see there $6.3 million, which is 90% of our collections estimated by Putnam versus 5.846 of last year. So there is an increase of $531,000, or roughly $500,000, or up 8%. So we get to our building fund, we have a carryover there of $450,000 versus $469 last year. It is down about 4%. I'll explain later why we fare that way. And then we have our ad valorem tax estimates of $911,000 versus $835 from last year. So overall, they are estimated to have a building fund operating budget of $1.3 million versus $1.3 million of last year. So just down, a little bit, $57,000 to the good. And then our child nutrition fund here, carry over $525,000 versus $156,000. And you're wondering, where did that big jump come from of $368,000? Well, we all know that last year we were all free on our meals, and so we had a lot of federal funding that came through the door. So that allowed us to have a large carryover, which we know in time will well, I don't want to say get sucked up, but it will. Because, we don't have this many, we don't have free meals this year, so that number will go down. And then in our estimated revenues, miscellaneous there, $2.26 million versus $1.4 million. Again, that is federal funding that we will receive reimbursement for. So $2.7 million in child nutrition versus $1.6 last year, and that is an increase of $1.1 million. We're down to our school age fund, which is $75,619. It's the same as last year, and we just, carry over that fund balance each year until we feel that we have a rainy day that we may need to expend those funds. Then we have our sinking fund millage rate, 15.84 versus 16.4, not too far off from last year, down 0.56, and that is coming from our auditors as well. And what they're saying is that for our sinking fund, that they feel we have to have a collection of $3.1 million this year to service our bonds, and we know that our net assessed valuation went up to $195 million, and so if you divide that 3.1 by that $195 million, then you get your 15.84 meals there. Any questions on that? All right, let's keep going. Revenue by sources comparison. So the district operates mainly 53% with state aid. And so when we talk about state aid, we're talking about our gross production, our motor vehicle, our REA tax, which is our rural electric cooperatives, and our foundation Then we see 4% is our county sources. That's our for meal collection 4% is our federal sources, which is all of our titles, Title I, 3, 6. We have our ESSER funds that are encompassed there, as well as our Emergency Connectivity Fund and our ARC funds. And then there is 24% of our revenue source that comes from local sources. And those local sources are our ad valorem, our rental facilities, interest, and contributions. So that's how we fared out at the end of 2022. And so for 2023, we see that the pendulum has moved a little because we're going to receive less in state sources. We're going to go down to about 46% from that 53, and that is all based on our NAV value, which I'll get into a little later.
You guys remember, you've heard me say this numerous times. That's good.
I'm going to tell them. I'm getting there. I'm going to have you on there. Okay. So revenue sources by category.
Hold on, Michelle. I think Trey.
Well, you may get to the federals. It's interesting, the federals went up by 2% as well. So
That's ESSER.
ESSER.
Yes. So let's take a big picture look at our revenue sources by category. This is basically just what I just showed you in the pie diagram, but if you look at the far right column on your paper, county sources, you can see that they're fairly consistent each year for the last 3 years. They are represented by color, gray, orange, and blue county sources. And then we see our federal sources, how they have elevated from 4.3 million in 2021 to 7 million here now in 2023 is our estimate. And we all know that that is due to our ESSER. Ad valorem sources there, 6.2 back in 2021. We're now up to 6.8. And then in our state sources, 14.3 million in 2021 and at 15.3 million in 2023. And we do see that little minor decrease there from 2022 that we are estimating. So we talk about our budgets covering in the general fund. Just want to bring to your attention that we all know that our general fund is our largest operating fund, and in FY21, the state funding factors were brought back to the average that we had in FY20 levels, which was a good thing for the district. So that's why we did have a positive fund balance as of June 30th. So our fund balance was held at 2.95 million, as I mentioned on the first page from the estimate of needs, which is roughly 9% of a fund balance. And again, did you see that decrease there of 452,000 from 2021? Now for us, I've been asked the question, even by our, even on the call with John for our bonding capacity and meetings or what have you. For us as a district, we did meet our expectations as far as our fund balance and our projections. This $452,000 is a timing difference. We would have been at our 3.4 million carryover that we estimated. However, as we know, we spend ESSER funds up front and we get reimbursed for those. And so we did not know it would take more than 45 days for the money to get back in our door, which it did. And so it came in after June 30th and we were not allowed to count it, but we do have the money in the door. That's the good news on that. Our initial state aid revenue for 2022-23 is $98,421 more that was actually collected at the end of FY21-22. And again, this is due to our state aid formula increasing factors by the state by $177 per weighted student. Right now, at this time, there is no estimate, no forecast rather, for budget cuts in the future for state aid. I'm getting this from our COSA partners, but we all are aware that there's inflation going on right now, and so the state has an average of 8 to 10% on inflation that we do need to keep our eyes on. Our midterm allocations in December are expected to result in a decrease in revenue with our chargeables accounted for due to growth, not only in ad valorem tax, but NAV, as you've heard, which is a good thing. Now, the thing about that is the more money you receive locally, the less less money you receive from the state. And so because of that, we will receive less money from the state because we will have a higher charge chargeable for our NAV. Now, with the midterm weighted ADM, that is based on, in December when we get our figures, that is based on, right now, the factor is, they're using our last year's, the entire end of the year factor for Guthrie Public Schools as the measure for our initial funding. So when we get to December, that's going to change because then would then take the highest of what it was at the end of last year or versus where we were for the first 9 weeks of school, which we're happy to report. As you heard, we are up. We have 86 students more than we did last October at this time. So that is a plus for us. So we should see a few dollars come in more for that. Although we're going to have the offset with our chargeables. Now let's talk about chargeables. So we have our increased net assessed valuation in property of FY22. So who does that in 1 year? We were very excited when we saw this 9.10% growth because the prior year before that we were down 5.3, 6.47. Then we had this nice jump of 9.10. And so as Dr. Simpson has said, this is a great thing for us because it increases our bonding capacity, which we have a maximum of 10% that we can use. He just thinks that I think it's bad because they have to make sure there's no tax, protests and things like that. So I worry about if the money's going to get in the door for sure. So that's our little difference on there. But
And you can tell that Dr. Chappell was not our CFO during the time of the state revenue failures and the budget cuts.
yes. So with that, we will continue on. And so our remaining ESSER 3 funds are budgeted to maintain our district operations over the next 2-year period because remember, we had a 3-year period on ESSER funds, and so we only have 2 more years remaining as we prevent, prepare, and respond to COVID-19. And at this time, we have expended some funds, as I mentioned, so we have $4.1 million remaining in our ESSER revenues. And so we are being very careful not to budget any new reoccurring expenses with those ESSER funds and using those for the intended purpose of our HVAC, VAC projects and renovations. So net assessed valuation, just want to bring it to your attention, a 5-year analysis here. As we can see, we started back in FY19 at 151 million, and then 160, 170, 179, and woohoo, we are now at 195 million on our valuation. So we are continuing to grow, as we call in South Guthrie, not Guthrie. All right. Let's talk about our general fund carryover analysis for the 7-year period. You can see in FY16 we were at 3.2 million on our carryover, and we took a dip there in FY17, but we have been continuing to grow. As we know, that was during the time, as Dr. Simpson just mentioned, that we did have our not necessarily a RIF, but attrition, and we had to make some budget adjustments right before our DIA come into play here at the district. And since then, we've been continuing to grow. FY19, 2.9 million, 3.3. We did dip in between FY19 and 20. As we all know that we made a land purchase here in town, and then in 3.4, we went back up 11%, and we're down right now 2.9, but we all know, and we're really at 3.4. We all know that. So, yeah. Okay, let's get into detail of our general fund revenue analysis. This is in your packet, and I do bring you a 3-year trend here of each category of our sources of revenue, beginning with the local sources, and they are line item in detail. So in our ad valorem for the first line, we saw that in 2021, I'll just go through the first line, projected at 5.8, and with actual was 5.8, down just a little bit by 45,000. And In FY '22, we estimated 6.1 million. We came in at 6.2 million, so we were up 115,000. And so we're estimating for this year 6.3 million. Our auditors are always estimating legally what they're required to do, which is 90% of collections, but we know that we always come in a little higher than that, and so our number does reflect that, a little higher at 6.3. But if you go down to that entire section there, our total projection for 2023 is 6.8 million for local sources. We'll continue down to intermediate sources. Same comparison there, or same estimate there, 810,000 on County 4 mil versus we brought in the door, we collected 796,000 in FY '22. So that overall category is 1.28 million. So if you turn the page, and we are now on 10. Right here, golden, yeah, it's golden, and that's why I was thinking that. But gross production tax is golden right now because they're collecting right now 50% more than where we were last year at this time. But we are keeping it conservative. We're not going to jump out there and say we're going to collect 50%, but we did increase our percentage there at 725,000 versus our 652 actual for FY '22. We know that our motor vehicle collection there is capped out from last year, and so we did receive $1.235 million in 2022, and we are estimating that we will have 1.285, just a little increase there. And again, after speaking with our coastal partners and knowing that they feel that the factor for the state of Oklahoma for students will go up for midterm anywhere from $54 to about $80 per student. We have accounted for that increase here on our foundation and salary incentive line. So we are estimating 9.7 million there for state aid. So the overall state sources, we're estimating 15.35 million, down from 15.6 that was collected for FY '22. If we continue, we see here we're now down to federal sources, and we have there on our CARES Act funds line, you can see there that in FY '22 we had predicted 5 million and we actually collected 3.2, and again that's because we have to expend that money first and then we are reimbursed. So we did spend that 3.2 that I mentioned earlier. So that's why there's a negative 1.6 million there in the estimate or the projected. But we are projecting to spend 4.83 million this year in our CARES Act. And again, this is all based on supply and demand, and if, how the labor is going with our projects and all those good things, if we will actually get through the 4 million, all of the 4 million for this fiscal year or not. But federal sources, 7 million is the projected revenue, and then we get down to non-revenue sources, 225,000 there. And then we brought forward our fund balance of 2.959 from FY '22. And in the end, that gives us a revenue estimate of 33.6 million with our projected expenditures of 30,610,000. And that does include inflation. Again, as the state is moving towards 8 to 10%, we did include 8% in our expenditure forecast as well. And that is a projected fund balance of $3,029,378, and roughly that is about 90% where we fared out at the end of FY '22.
Can you restate that? So you assumed an 8% growth in expenditures? Is that what?
No, I said we expect 8% inflation in our expenditures.
Yeah.
We did budget for that.
Fixed cost.
So let's talk about the expenditures. We're here now on the fixed cost and discretionary costs. And so we'll see here in the first section there, actual costs for our fixed costs, $25,262,000. You can see that broke down there, salaries, professional, technical, utilities, what have you. And our fixed costs are always 84 to 85% of our budget, and we normally only have about unless we have 4% discretion normally at the end of the year, but you'll see that that has flip-flopped a little bit now that we have that extra ESSER funding in there. But you see the difference in salaries and benefits that have been estimated. It's roughly $875,000 increase there. We have our insurance in our 2023 column, which we know has been increased. We have $710,000 there. So if we continue down to page 13, that gives us the overall picture as far as fixed costs and discretionary costs. We have there $426,000 was our actual cost in our site expenses, textbooks, library, furniture, supplies, and we are estimating the same flat rate there, $430,000, roughly 1.4% of the district's expenditures, and then departmental costs below. That's where we see that fluctuation there, and that ESSER money is in that category. 4.1 million was spent versus 3.86, which is estimated. So that gives us a total expenditure for FY22. We spoke about this. Our expenditures were $29.8 million. We are estimating or projecting $30,610,000, and we see that difference there on our fixed costs. And so I'll stop right there, see if there's any questions on that portion before I continue. All right. Let's continue and talk about something exciting, which is our general fund expenditure analysis. We want to show that we have been great stewards of our community's monies, if you will, here. You see in FY15, we had expenditures of 22.3, and you can see we dipped down a little bit in the following years, and of course we know what happened during those years. And then we see the year of COVID, FY20, $25.1 million. And then we continued school year-round, and we saw in FY21 when our students started returning, we went back up to $25.9 million. And then in FY22, we were very close to back to full term as far as our student population, and we had $29.8 million in expenditures. Again, the numbers are right there on the page, and you can see that difference of $3 million there, which is roughly our ESSER money. We spent 3.3. Had we not had those expenditures in there, our expenditures would have been roughly $26 million, which is normal for us, which would have been an increase of about $500,000 in between those years. So we would have been, pretty stable there. But speaking of that, in FY22, even at $29.8 million, our budget projected was $29.998, so we did come in under budget by $147,000. So happy about that.
Very good.
So here's a pictorial here. If you're like me and you need to see your revenue and your expenditures together all on the same page, we just want to show you here that from FY15 all the way to 22, we are very consistent here that you can see we brought in $25 million in collections. We spent 22 in expenditures. We had 24 in collections, and we spent 21 in expenditures, FY16. And so I'm just showing the pattern here to show that the district is very consistent in our expenditures, and we try to definitely maintain and keep our fund balance around that $3 million, if at all possible, at a minimum, which is, what you guys require.
So Dr. Chappell, so remind me, what's the board policy on the target carryover? Is it 12% or?
The board policy, thank you for asking, is 12%. and the state is 14%. And right now, because of the ESSER funds, that has been waived until we have until 2025 to have a fund balance carryover that would be more than 14%. Now, why did it go down between those years? Remember the year that we purchased the land, it started there that you guys, the board, allowed us to take our fund balance percentage down, and so that's why we're roughly,
So I think we were about 9%,
yes,
and then, but you had some collections come in.
yes.
So that moved us to what?
That still moved, it's probably about 10%.
And then, so if I'm looking at these numbers correct, so we're anticipating a $602,000 increase in collections, but we're budgeting for about about $760,000 more in expenditure. So can we expect a further decline in that carryover? Because I'm looking at about a net of about $150,000, $200,000.
No, you cannot expect a further decline. That is the bottom, the number that it should be at this point. The reason why it would be more is because if the midterm adjusted, we have more revenue that comes in at that time, which I do think that we will, but we left it as flat as we could so that we can have a true number on our revenue and expenditures. But I do believe that that number.
Well, because I'm just looking at about a $602,000 increase, net increase in collections, but about $758,000 increase in expenses. So that would indicate probably a further decline unless we have a very positive mid-year.
And yes, and that's what I'm saying. I do think that we will have a more positive mid-term collection than what is listed.
And that also doesn't factor in any future NAV growth as well on ad valorem. I mean, what did you project for NAV growth in this budget?
For next year, I don't think we're going to be at 9.1.
No.
Yeah, so we're looking at about 7.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. We're at our general fund expenditures by function. We do this to show you that we are definitely spending our money wisely. We still have instruction is our biggest expense at $16 million, followed by our operations and maintenance of plant, which is $6.3 million. And then you can just go down the list there and see what's next in line, which would be support for students. So $30,610,000 listed there again. And if you turn the page, here's a pictorial because we like to see what that pie will show us. So again, instruction is more than 50% of our expenditures for the year at 53%. And then we have all of our other categories that are listed there by percentage. And that transfer is showing 0 only because it's $5,000. And so, it paired out when you get 2 percentages there. So again, although the operating general fund is our largest operating fund, I do like to mention information about the building fund. The budget summary for the building fund, we know that the building fund is our expense fund for our repairs throughout the district, our capital expenditures, and if needed, we are able to transfer some of our operational costs from the general fund to building fund for our utilities, for example. So just bringing that to the forefront, our funds are derived from proceeds of the 5 mills billed and levied as well, along with their prior year carried forward. And so we saw on the first page of our estimate of needs that our auditors are estimating $911,204 for collections for FY 22-23 for the building fund. And with that, their carryover for this year was $450,608, which is a decrease in approximately $18,000, 4% down, as I mentioned before. And that was due to, if you look on your next page, which is our graph here, you'll see the building fund carryover analysis again. And so we see that we were at our peak in FY 18. We were at $773,000. as far as carryover goes, and then in FY19, I think I've already explained between 19 and 20, we had our land purchase there, and this past fiscal year, we did purchase some parking lots for our growth at Carryover, which brought us down a little bit, and that expenditure, $33,000. So roughly, that is what the difference is there on our building fund, but our goal definitely is to start building that back up, which we do believe we'll be able to do this year with our NAV growth, and hopefully we can get that back up at least 10%. So the difference between that $773,000 in FY18 to now is a difference in 40%, and so our goal is just to slowly build that back up as we can. Finally, child nutrition. Like she discussed them too, we don't want to leave them out. We talk about their revenues because they should be a self-sustaining program for our school district. And so we just want to show that in FY18, they had $187,000 for their carryover. And then we moved into building Charter Oak, and then we had the teacher walkout, and we had several things that affected child nutrition over this 5-year analysis. But you can see that we're moving in the right direction as a FY21, where they were able to carry forward $156,000, and then they ended FY22 with $525,209. And again, we know that is definitely attributable to their federal reimbursement funds due to free meals that we will not have for next year. So we do expect that carryover to be a little less, but hopefully they will still be able to be sustainable. And with that concludes my presentation. Are there any?
Very good, very good. Very good.
Yeah, so do we have a sense yet what the mid-year may look like, or is it still very early?
It's still very early, but what I can tell you is that our chargeable dollars will not change because they are using the same amount for all for initial allocations and midterms. So that's a good thing. So we're able to predict that very well. The only factor that is going to change is that they will then take our $195 million valuation and apply that at midterm versus where we ended last year at the $179 million. So that is the factor that is changing that, and where we're going to be down about $427,000 from our initial $10 million.
But with more students.
But with more students. So yeah, we'll have some offset there. So we'll balance it out. But
Big picture item that's a cautionary item, and those of you that were on the board in 2016 will remember this, that one of the things that I took out of her presentation that I think is something that we need to be cognizant of going forward into next year is the growth of gross production, because that becomes chargeable next year on next year's state aid allocation. So that growth, then we're charged for that next year. And so that's something that I would caution you to be aware of and kind of watch that as we see the state, how the state fares with that too.
took the words right out of my mouth.
Thank you, Dr. Chappell.
Thank you.
This is an action item.
Okay, so agenda item 12A, under the business agenda, do we have a motion to approve?
Mr. President, I make a motion we approve the 2022-2023 school budget.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any board discussion? Roll call, please.
Plagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Silly.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12B, recommendation, consideration, action upon amended agreement with the City of Guthrie for school resource officers provided by Guthrie Police Department for 2022 to 2023.
pages 112 through 116, you will see the amended agreement that has been approved by the Guthrie City Council, and we had this discussion in committees. I'm trying to get to that page myself, but essentially what we're going to do, we have an action item later on under personnel. One of the police officers that we have utilized for numerous years as an SRO at the upper elementary is going to retire from the city of Guthrie, and we will hire him as our SRO. He will become our employee, and the city is paying us for the difference of what we would be paying otherwise for all of the SROs. And so it is no cost to the district, and we get to keep a seasoned SRO, and he will then become our employee and be a reserve officer for the Guthrie Police Department. Finally got to it. And again, the city of Guthrie has already approved this agreement. We have an executed copy that Sam will, upon your approval, will present for our signatures.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the amended agreement with the City of Guthrie for school resource officers provided by the Guthrie Police Department for 2022-2023.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12C, recommendation, consideration, action upon request from the Guthrie Girls Basketball Booster Club to become a sanctioned organization.
With changes in coaching staff, the parents and the coach would like to achieve sanctioning for their booster club, and we recommend approval. If there's any questions, Dr. Chapel or I, either one, can carry that.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the request from the Guthrie Girls Basketball Booster Club to become a sanctioned organization.
Second.
Okay, the motion and a second. Any board discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12D, recommendation, consideration, and action upon Guthrie Junior High Health Fair for 7th grade students, November 4th, 2022.
Page 120 of your packet has the explanation. We bring this to you on an annual basis, and this health fair, it has changed somewhat through the years, but in many cases it is still, for the most part, still the same content that we've had in the past, and sometimes we've had different presenters. One of the constants has been John Talley, who is now Representative John Talley, and a person that has worked with students throughout the state for many years and does a great job with that. Would recommend approval.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the Guthrie Junior High Health Fair for 7th grade students, November 4th, 2022.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any board discussion?
He did, John Talley even did this when I was in junior high. He was very young at the time.
Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12E, recommendation, consideration, and action to approve change orders number 6, 7, and 8 for Lambert Construction.
You have in your packet explanations of these. One of these is a deduct on the allocation for the building permit. One of them is to fur out the wall and put tile on it to cover many of the surface-mounted utilities that had been placed there throughout the years. And then the other one is drainage work that will take the water from the roof underneath where the sidewalk and entrance will be when they complete the project. We're still under our estimated contingency and would recommend approval on these items.
Mr. President, I move that we approve change order 006, 007, and 008 for Lambert Construction Company.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other board discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12F, discussion and possible board action to pass the 2023 annual school election resolution.
And pages 125 and 126 of your packet, it's that time of year again. The board seat that is up this year is seat number 5, which Ms. Smedley has, and we have the resolution in your packet for your approval. Filing is first week of December. Election depends on how many people file. Could be in February for a quote-unquote primary, and then in April. I call it a quote-unquote primary because it's not partisan, but if we have more than 2, then we have to have the election and then a runoff afterward, unless somebody gets more than 50%.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution for the 2023 annual school board election.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12, recommendation, consideration, and action to modify district policy D52 and rescind district policy F54 to create district policy E48, use of multiple occupancy restrooms and changing areas.
This is a policy breakthrough because we can take 2 policies and roll them into one. This is at the recommendation of our attorney after we got the emergency rules from the State Board of Ed on how we administer our restroom policies. And you have a red line version in there in the packet, and I would recommend approval and avoid any questions should you ask them.
Mr. President, I move that we modify district policy D52 and rescind district policy F54 to create district policy E48, use of multiple occupancy restrooms and changing areas.
Second.
Good, a motion and a second. Any discussion? So I just got a quick question. Really, I mean, there's nothing here other than what's consistent or updating to reflect current state law, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gave us some more definition and some tools with the way it came out to where we didn't have to differentiate. One of the key elements here is that the previous policies did not address visitors to the campus that were not students or staff. And so this is somewhat broader in that it also addresses visitors to the campus that may not be students or staff.
Good. Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, agenda item 12H, consider and vote to approve a resolution pertaining to the district's $2,200,000 general obligation building bonds, Series 2022B, including fixing the amount of the bonds to mature each year, fixing the time and place the bonds are to be sold, approving the preliminary official statement and authorizing distribution of the same, authorizing the clerk to give notice of said sale as required by law, and approving other matters related to the issuance of the bonds.
Pages 129 through 132 are the first item under consideration. Mr. Wolf is here along with Ms. Dawson from Municipal Finance. And John, what do you what would you like to offer?
Well, the first things first, as Dr. Simpson mentioned, Charity Dawson, a new employee, started July 1st. She's the prior CFO for Stillwater Public Schools. And we were looking to hire, and as I look at candidates, those that actually understood half of the information that I would send out to the district, Jared would actually take my analysis and add to it, expand it, and so forth. So she was certainly a great candidate for us, and I think she'll focus in the school, Geo Bond area, and to other areas of our firm. But I at least want to introduce you to her tonight. But you may not see my smiling face every meeting going forward. So I know you missed that.
Can I argue with her like I do?
She's used to me, so that's all right. So this is $2.2 million, 10-year term issue. Typically don't do two issues in the same year, but in looking at your growth and net assessed valuation that Michelle addressed, and our target mill levy is 17 mills, we were going to take advantage to issue these bonds. I used to say before interest rates get much higher. Well, we hope that we only have 2 more federal open market committee meetings in November and December. I don't know how much more rates are going to be addressed or how much. So we're going to move forward on this and can answer any questions that you guys have. We plan on closing the transaction, or the sale will be on the 14th of November. We'll close the transaction December 21st, so you'll have dollars in hand. And be glad to answer any questions.
So if the interest rate does go up prior to when we close, does that affect that?
Well, we have the bond sale November 14th. We lock the rate in.
Okay, so that's when we lock it in.
And then that's good until the bonds mature.
Perfect.
So this is a 10-year term bond issue.
So we got the 17 mil target.
Yes.
So what interest rate assumptions are you having to use
For this senior transaction?
to make all that work?
Right now, it's a 10-year term. If you were to sell your bonds today, you'd probably be around a 3.30 and 3.40, 3.3 or 3.4% 10-year term. Everyone got spoiled with the 1%, 1.5%. Those days, I wouldn't say are gone, but they're way back. But the good thing is the rates that had municipal rates don't always exactly match what the Fed fund rate is or what treasuries are, and so they don't react knee-jerk as much as treasury rates. But they have come up. They've somewhat stabilized here in the last week and a half. We're going to hope that a little over 30 days from now that we're still in that same market. We obviously, as the 17 mil is our target, there are 2 variables. One is what the rates would be on this, and 2 is these won't actually be levied until next fall. And so we'll have to look at what your net assessed valuation growth is. I think we assume 5% for where we're at going forward. If you have, as Michelle addressed, you got a chance for continued growth in your district. So if you're at 7%, then that certainly helps. 6, 7, 8, 9% that we had this year helps you keep that mill levy below the target.
So what would be considered flat growth? I mean, 3% more or less? I mean, even in a worst case?
3.5. I think we assumed 4.5, and then we bumped that to 5.5, if I'm not mistaken.
Could have been to 5.5.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
But my experience, and John's got more of it than I do, but my experience is 3.5% is incredibly conservative in a community that's growing, but in a community that is not growing or we have a stagnant economy, that's where we've been very conservative, and we have beaten the assumption, I believe, every time, have we not?
We have not. Since the election, 2019 election, we had the 19, 20, 3 different, this is the 4th mill levy year that.
So assuming worst case, 3.5%, 4%. I think next year our target's mill levy's, what, 15.7, I think we seen in the budget.
15.84.
15.84, so, I mean, worst case, that would maybe raise a mill levy to, oh, how would that adjust?
Well, we are operating under, we will not go over 17 mils. So that with the issuance of this 2.2 million, we're estimating we're going to be
5%.
At 17 mils and not to go over. And we have various assumptions, which are growth in NAV and interest rate. And so our intent was to try to our best, knowing that there are variables, to not exceed 17 mils. We've never got close to 17 mils. We've actually been less than what you took to the voters when you said this is our target. And when you say target, it's almost like, well, we'll just make 17 mils every year. It's because of changes in interest rates and excess valuation. Some districts say, okay, we're going to have a 5-year window to issue bonds. We were authorized by the voters, and our target mill levy is 20 mils. They may have some years at 19, some at 21, but it averages out at that point. From the district standpoint, we've always said, let's try to use all the variables that we have, make sure we don't go over that 17 mils, understanding there's so many variables that can make that happen. We also wanted to be able to get out and issue debt and to apply the proceeds from these bonds here to use towards projects, collateral, so forth, and to not basically leave anything on the floor. We said 17 mils, we're going to try to get as close to that. And by combining what we issued before,
And I think, not to put words in your mouth, but I think the question that I think you're probably wondering is, are we going to go over 17 if the bottom falls out? Because that's when we would all have to answer to the public. And the best guess of that, I think, is probably not. And we've put a lot of safeguards in place. But the other thing I would say is to remember that selling these sooner allows us to begin construction in an inflationary period to hedge against that, to provide what we have promised the voters with collateral. And I think that's we've got to play both sides of the fence on that. And you know, John and I have talked about, we don't want to lose the trust of the voters in delivering what we promised, whether it be the millage level or constructing a school.
A good example of that, we looked at 2 million, then we looked at 2.5, and we back down to 2.2.
That's part of the arguing that we were talking about.
Yeah, back and forth.
John, you have a target rate of 3.3 to 3.4 on this sale off the top of your head. What was the last
That's
one?
the average interest rate.
Yeah, the last one comparatively. I know you probably told us, but I don't have it.
I'm going to cheat, take it real quick. I know, I don't want to look back, I'll start crying, but. Okay, the deal we did, we closed in August was at 2.763. And so that's in August, that's after all of these adjustments. So we're up about 60 basis points from that. Like I said, I don't know if I want to mention prior years, but, we.
Don't dig too deep.
Yeah, 2017 bonds that we did that were, let me give you a good example. You have the big bond that we did, Charter Oak. We're talking numbers tonight, budget and everything. Most I've talked about numbers in probably 5 years. 2.05% is what we had when we did the deal back in 15.
Didn't we have one that was under 1%?
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. That was the one that.
Try to keep good memories in place.
Well, that's a 2-year deal.
Okay.
And the 2-year deal, we did a 0.337. Yeah. And so we're kind of back where we were a decade ago, but anyway. Be glad to answer any more questions.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Good. Do we have a motion to approve?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution pertaining to the district's 2.2 million general obligation building bonds, Series 2022B, including fixing the amount of bonds to mature each year, fixing the time and place the bonds are to be sold, approving the preliminary official statement, and authorizing distribution of same, authorizing the clerk to give notice of said sale as required by law, and approving other matters related to the issuance of bonds.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second. Any board discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12I, consider and vote to approve a contract with Bank First, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to serve as registrar and paying agent on the district's $2,200,000 general obligation building bonds, Series 2022B.
That agreement's on pages 133 through 139. This is an item that we bring when we are in the process of selling the bonds, and we have used Bank First several times, and they've done fine with us.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve a contract with Bank First, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to serve as registrar and paying agent on the district's 2.2 general obligation building bonds, Series 2022B.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any board discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12J, consider and vote to approve a contract with Hillborn and Widman, Tulsa, Oklahoma, to serve as bond counsel and disclosure counsel on the district's $2,200,000 general obligation building bonds, Series 2022B.
This is the firm that we have used every time we've had a bond sale. They have served us well, and very specialized item, and we would recommend approval.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the contract with Hillborn and Weidman, Tulsa, Oklahoma, to serve as bond counsel and disclosure counsel on the district's 2.2 general obligation building bonds, Series 2022B.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, so next category is also agenda item 12, but it's proposed executive session for the purpose of discussing employment of personnel, FMLA request, resignation, separation from employment, and transfer of position request. All is set out on the personnel reports. Discussion of extra duty assignments for 2022 to 2023, disclosure of which information would violate the confidentiality requirements of state and/or federal law, all pursuant to 25 Oklahoma statute, section 307B, 1 and 7. We have a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. President, I move that we go in executive session.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Flagg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Somebody set up, do the forms and move them.
Yeah.
Okay, this is to acknowledge the board's return to open session. Only items in the agenda. Oh, I can get the script off. Only items in agenda 12 were discussed in executive session. No votes were taken. This shall constitute the executive session minutes. So agenda item 13, vote on action is set out on the personnel reports.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the personnel reports.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Clegg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 14, action upon recommendation of extra duty assignments is listed for 2022 to 2023.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the extra duty assignments as listed for 2022-23.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Clegg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 15, recommendation, consideration, and action to approve a one-time route driver stipend for the remainder of 2022 to 2023 school year.
Page 145 has this recommendation. This would be a $400 stipend for all bus drivers that have been with the district for the entire first semester, and an additional $400 for any bus driver that is with the district for the second semester. Recommend approval.
Mr. President, I make a motion we approve a one-time route driver stipend for the remainder of 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Clegg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 16, recommendation, consideration, and action to accept any resignations offered since the posting of the agenda.
We have none.
Agenda item 17, discussion of possible action on new business not known about or could not have been reasonably foreseen at the time of the agenda posting.
We have none.
Agenda item 18, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Clegg.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Gerard.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Salee.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.